The atmosphere surrounding our favorite characters has grown palpably tense, overshadowed by a looming, incredibly dangerous secret that has completely ensnared Ashley, Grayson, and Tomas in a treacherous and unpredictable web. This is not merely a passing interpersonal conflict. It is a profound, life altering mystery that has fundamentally shifted the dynamics between these three individuals, threatening to destroy everything they hold dear. At the absolute center of this perilous labyrinth is Ashley, a woman who finds herself unwittingly dragged into a high stakes game of cat and mouse. While she initially believed her life was on a relatively stable trajectory, the sudden influx of whispers, hidden agendas, and unspoken threats has completely upended her reality. The secret itself remains shrouded in utter darkness, a heavy, suffocating presence that dictates every interaction, every glance, and every desperate decision made by the men in her life. Both Grayson and Tomas, driven by vastly different motivations but united by a shared proximity to extreme danger, are desperately trying to unravel the truth before it consumes them all. However, their uncoordinated methods and their relentless pursuit of this enigma have created a vortex of chaos, and Ashley is the one being pulled directly into its destructive center, forced to navigate a terrifying situation where every single step could trigger a catastrophic fallout. Tomas has transformed into a man entirely possessed, his every waking moment consumed by a relentless pursuit of clues directly tied to the enigmatic figure of Lynette. The activities surrounding this mysterious woman have always been cloaked in deep suspicion, but Tomas is now entirely convinced that she is the central linchpin in a massive, sprawling conspiracy that extends far beyond the surface level of the city's daily dramas. His investigation is no longer just a casual inquiry or a professional curiosity. It has evolved into a dangerous, all-consuming obsession. He spends countless sleepless nights piecing together fragmented information, analyzing hidden financial trails, and scrutinizing every known associate of Lynette. Tomas operates under the heavy, self-imposed burden of belief that if he does not expose this grand conspiracy, the consequences will be dire for everyone involved. His determination is both admirable and deeply terrifying, as he pushes boundaries and crosses ethical lines that he previously would have respected without question. The sheer scale of the conspiracy he envisions is staggering, involving shadowy figures and high-level manipulation, making his solo crusade not just wildly ambitious, but incredibly hazardous to his own physical well-being and the safety of those in his immediate orbit. The mere mention of Lynette brings a chilling breeze to the narrative, as her mysterious activities serve as the primary catalyst for this entire harrowing ordeal. While the full extent of her involvement remains tantalizingly out of reach, the breadcrumbs she has left behind suggest a level of cunning and ruthlessness that Tomas is desperately trying to expose to the light of day. Tomas believes with absolute certainty that Lynette is not acting alone, but rather serving as a crucial, highly protected node in a much larger, darker network that operates in the unseen criminal corners of their world. Every single clue he uncovers about her past dealings, her secret meetings, and her hidden assets only deepens his conviction that a monumental threat is looming over them all. He is meticulously tracking her every historical move, trying to anticipate the next phase of this suspected conspiracy. However, by aggressively poking around in Lynette's shadowy affairs, Tomas is essentially kicking a hornet's nest. He is drawing the direct attention of dangerous individuals who vastly prefer to remain hidden, and his relentless digging is rapidly making him a primary target for those who wish to keep Lynette's darkest secrets buried forever. On the completely opposite side of this dangerous equation is Grayson, who has already experienced the very real, terrifying physical manifestations of this deadly secret. Unlike Tomas, who is actively and aggressively hunting the danger, Grayson has found himself violently and unwillingly pulled into it. He has recently been the victim of a brutal, unprovoked attack, a stark and terrifying warning from the shadowy figures orchestrating this overarching conspiracy. This assault was not a random act of street violence, but a highly calculated message designed specifically to intimidate him, break his spirit, and force his absolute compliance or eternal silence. The physical scars from the encounter may be slowly healing, but the psychological toll of the attack weighs incredibly heavily on Grayson's broad shoulders. He is acutely, painfully aware of the immense pressure and the lethal capabilities of the people standing behind this secret. Every shadow in the hospital seems to hide a potential threat, and every unfamiliar face is a source of profound, gripping paranoia. Grayson is a man living constantly on the edge, carrying the crushing burden of knowing just how ruthless their unseen adversaries truly are, and this horrifying knowledge dictates his every agonizing decision. Driven by a desperate, overwhelming need to protect the woman he deeply cares for, Grayson has adopted a heartbreaking and ultimately destructive strategy. He is purposefully and coldly distancing himself from Ashley. He operates under the tragic, misguided misconception that by pushing her away, by severing their emotional ties, he can magically remove her from the crosshairs of the dangerous individuals who so viciously attacked him. He swallows his own immense emotional pain, presenting a cold, detached, and unfeeling exterior to Ashley in the desperate hope that she will seek safety far away from his turbulent, dangerous life. However, this self-sacrificing maneuver is spectacularly backfiring in real time. Instead of providing Ashley with a comforting sense of security, Grayson's sudden emotional withdrawal and physical distance are only exponentially amplifying her anxiety. She can clearly see the lingering shadows of raw fear in his eyes, the tight tension in his jaw, and the hypervigilance that now characterizes his every single movement. Grayson's attempt to act as a solitary, impenetrable shield is fundamentally flawed, as it leaves Ashley feeling abandoned and profoundly worried about his safety, completely defeating the purpose of his painful sacrifice. Caught squarely and unforgivingly in the middle of this rapidly escalating crisis is Ashley, a woman desperately trying to maintain her emotional footing as the ground literally crumbles beneath her feet. Her heart is agonizingly torn, pulled in wildly different directions by her deep affection, loyalty, and mounting concern for both Grayson and Tomas. She cares immensely for Grayson, feeling the undeniable magnetic pull of their profound connection, yet she is simultaneously paralyzed by a gripping fear for his physical well-being, especially after witnessing the horrific aftermath of the attack he recently endured. At the exact same time, her anxiety for Tomas is rapidly reaching a fever pitch. She watches with growing helpless dread as he plunges deeper and deeper into his obsessive tunnel vision investigation, knowing in her gut that his relentless pursuit of the absolute truth is putting him directly in the lethal line of fire. Ashley is highly perceptive and incredibly intelligent. She understands the terrifying gravity of the situation far better than either man gives her credit for. She knows unequivocally that both Grayson and Tomas are in grave, immediate danger, and she is haunted by the terrifying realization that even the slightest misstep could result in catastrophic consequences. The most agonizing and destructive aspect of Ashley's precarious predicament is the palpable, suffocating wall of secrecy that has been hastily erected around her by the very men who loudly claim to care for her most. Both Tomas and Grayson, driven by a deeply misguided sense of traditional chivalry and a desperate, frantic desire to shield her from the horrors they are currently facing, have consciously chosen to withhold the complete truth. They offer her nothing but frustrating half-truths, evasive answers, and forced, unconvincing smiles, foolishly believing that enforced ignorance will somehow serve as her impenetrable armor. However, Ashley is far too intelligent and observant to be placated by these transparent, insulting deceptions. She can physically feel the heavy, oppressive weight of the unsaid words hanging thickly in the air during every single interaction she has with them. This well intentioned but fundamentally flawed strategy of absolute protection is systematically and ruthlessly destroying the delicate foundation of trust that once beautifully existed between them. Instead of feeling safe and cherished, Ashley feels marginalized, disempowered, and deeply personally betrayed by their actions. Ashley's growing, nagging suspicions are spectacularly confirmed when she makes a chilling, undeniable discovery. Tomas is actively and intentionally concealing a vital piece of the investigative puzzle. Through her own careful, quiet observations and perhaps a moment of accidental but fortuitous discovery, she realizes with absolute certainty that Tomas is holding on to a crucial, definitive clue directly related to Lynette, a massive piece of evidence he has deliberately chosen not to share with her or seemingly with the proper authorities. This shocking revelation strikes a heavy, devastating blow to Ashley's inherent trust in him. Why would the man who loudly claims to be seeking the absolute, unvarnished truth suddenly decide to bury a vital, potentially case-breaking lead? She begins to frantically wonder if Tomas's underlying motives are entirely pure, or if his blinding obsession with the conspiracy has fatally compromised his logical judgment. Is he hiding the clue to protect someone else, to use it as dangerous leverage, or simply because the truth it reveals is too horrifying to bring into the light? This hidden piece of evidence becomes a massive, insurmountable wedge between them. Similarly, Ashley's fraught interactions with Grayson are currently characterized by a maddening, inescapable sense of incomplete disclosure and hidden agendas. While Grayson repeatedly and forcefully claims he is simply trying to keep his distance to ensure her ultimate safety, Ashley's razor-sharp intuition tells her a very different, much darker story. She easily recognizes the subtle, undeniable, tells the specific way he aggressively avoids certain topics, the sudden, jarring changes in conversation when particular names are mentioned, and the dark, hauntingly knowing look in his eyes that directly contradicts his verbal claims of total ignorance. She realizes with absolute terrifying certainty that Grayson knows significantly more about the dangerous secret and the ruthless people behind it than he is ever willing to admit out loud. He is silently carrying a massive, crushing burden of knowledge, a secret, terrifying truth that he stubbornly refuses to vocalize to anyone. This realization is incredibly frustrating and deeply alienating for Ashley. She understands on an intellectual level that he is motivated by a desire to protect her, but his stubborn refusal to share his critical knowledge leaves her feeling incredibly vulnerable and entirely unprepared. The ultimate culmination of these painful deceptions and deeply hidden truths forces Ashley into an agonizing, seemingly impossible emotional and moral dilemma. She finds herself standing at a treacherous, terrifying crossroads, forced by circumstance to choose between two fundamentally opposed philosophies perfectly represented by the two men in her life. On one side stands Tomas, the relentless, uncompromising seeker of truth, who firmly believes that fully exposing the conspiracy is the only actual way to truly eradicate the danger, even if the pursuit itself is incredibly perilous and potentially fatal. On the exact opposite side stands Grayson, the fiercely protective, self-sacrificing shield who believes with equal conviction that burying the truth and maintaining absolute distance is the only viable, realistic strategy to keep them all breathing. Ashley is violently, painfully torn between standing loyally by the man who is actively fighting to uncover the darkness and the man who is willing to sacrifice his own personal happiness and endure silent, agonizing suffering just to keep her physically safe. It is a heartbreaking, impossible choice, between the dangerous light of revelation and the suffocating, isolating safety of ignorance. The simmering tension between the three individuals finally reaches an explosive boiling point when Ashley independently pieces together the final, most terrifying part of this entire convoluted puzzle. Through her careful, meticulous observation of both men's completely separate, highly secretive actions, she comes to a staggering, world-altering realization. Tomas and Grayson are not dealing with isolated incidents or entirely separate threats as they seem to believe. They are, in absolute fact, on a devastating, high-speed collision course, unknowingly pursuing the exact same incredibly dangerous secret from two entirely different, uncoordinated angles. Tomas is obsessively following the digital and financial breadcrumbs left behind by Lynette, working his way from the outside in, desperately trying to expose the grand, overarching conspiracy. Grayson, on the other hand, having already been violently attacked by the ruthless enforcers of this very secret, is dealing with the immediate physical threat from the inside out. They are both blindly circling the exact same deadly vortex, completely unaware that their separate, secretive actions are rapidly drawing them closer to a shared, explosive, and potentially fatal confrontation. Ashley implicitly understands that this deeply shared secret is not just a standard, easily resolved hospital scandal. It is a highly volatile, immediate, life-threatening situation that possesses the terrifying power to violently drag all three of them into an inescapable, deadly vortex of trouble. The shadowy people aggressively protecting this secret have already definitively proven their utter willingness to use brutal, uncompromising violence against Grayson, and they will undoubtedly not hesitate for a single second to permanently eliminate Tomas if he gets even a fraction too close to the actual truth. If Tomas and Grayson stubbornly continue to operate in their isolated silos, completely blinded by their misguided desire to protect Ashley and their inherent growing mistrust of one another, they are virtually guaranteeing their own mutual destruction. The secret is simply far too large, far too deeply entrenched, and far too fiercely guarded by highly ruthless individuals for either man to ever hope to tackle successfully alone. Ashley is now heavily burdened with the terrifying, isolating knowledge that she is the absolute only one who sees the full, horrifying picture. The entire situation has rapidly and terrifyingly devolved into a desperate, high-stakes race against time. Ashley knows deep in her soul that she can no longer afford to remain a passive, silent observer, paralyzed by her own internal confusion and the men's deeply misguided attempts to magically shield her from reality. She must urgently find a way to forcefully break through the thick, impenetrable walls of absolute secrecy and masculine stubbornness that both Tomas and Grayson have so carefully erected. She has to somehow convince them that their current isolated strategies are not only completely ineffective, but actively, undeniably suicidal in the face of this particular enemy. The absolute only way they can possibly hope to survive the impending, devastating wrath of the powerful people behind Lynette's vast conspiracy is if they immediately pool their critical knowledge, seamlessly combine their resources, and bravely face the overwhelming threat as a completely unified, impenetrable front. But getting two highly proud, fiercely protective, and currently deeply suspicious men to suddenly trust each other and share their most closely guarded, dangerous secrets may prove to be a task even more difficult than uncovering the conspiracy itself. This intense narrative is no longer just about uncovering a juicy local scandal. It is fundamentally about basic, desperate human survival. The intricate, suffocating web of lies. The deeply misguided attempts at emotional protection and the relentless, blinding pursuit of a deadly truth have perfectly combined to create a flawless storm of impending tragedy. The dedicated viewers are left sitting on the absolute edge of their seats, watching with bated breath as these three beloved characters blindly navigate a literal minefield where one single wrong step will result in the ultimate price being paid.